you.
I'm not sure. Okay,
so weird. All right. I guess I am not tech savvy. I'm going to teach you exactly how to plan a amazing road trip, or how we really basically plan RV travel. But let's just say, like, yeah, apologize for starting late, and I had to switch it over to a different one. So if you were waiting for me on the other chat, switch over to this one. Today I want to talk about my meltdown. So yesterday we're traveling fast. This is why I'm having meltdowns. We were the last time I did this live was 3 days ago. And we were in Santos, which is a mountain biking area in Ocala. And we drove all the way across Orlando and paid all these tolls to get over to Sebastian Inlet because we had reserved campground there and we really wanted to surf. Okay, we came to Florida in hopes of surfing. And I've surfed twice, and I kid you not, both times were really mediocre. And one of the times was, well, like really, really, really mediocre. So talk about perspective and having to shift your mindset. So yesterday we're in Sebastian Inlet, and I didn't paddle out. I was feeling horrible. And for me to feel horrible, it's a big deal because I'm usually like full of energy, can do all, just go, go, go. And I got there and I go, Gabi, you just paddle out without me. I'm done. I'm so tired. I don't want to have to work hard. The surf isn't that great. And so anyways, we're at Sebastian Inlet. Gabi's surfing with sharks, by the way. Sorry about the noise. And so she goes into, I'm standing on the beach with Isabelle talking about, like, kind of whining. Like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I feel so bad. This is so ridiculous. And I thought about it. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't show the meltdowns. They don't happen very often, but I thought, I have to do another live about why. I know exactly why it got to a point that I'm like, I hate this. I just want to go back to our house in Polson. I need a break from the RV. But yet 72 hours before, I was like, this is amazing. This is so great. So it's the reality of RV living. And it really came down to logistics. I talked about in the last live that the number one thing you want to do is have a why, or know your intention from RV living. Our number one reason for RV living is because it puts us at the doorstep of some type of adventure. There's either a surf or rock climbing or a great hike. If there aren't those things, I really don't enjoy RV living that much. I think that's why some people with different personality types can take boondocking. I know a lot of people who will just pull up in a beautiful open space and they can just chill. I don't chill. I don't like to chill. 15 minutes laying in a hammock and reading, great. But I want to be active and doing things. So we end up in this spot in our travel. So it kind of comes back to number one, like knowing that core desire that you want when you're planning your logistics. The other thing is that for us, so it was great when there's mountain biking and it was great when there was surf. But the next problem was that we were moving so fast that every time I get to those destinations, I was wiped out. And then remember, I don't mind doing all the driving. I love driving and towing our fifth wheel, but I have to account for a recovery period. And it was great, from going from Montana all the way to Florida. For sometimes we would try to be like only 100 miles a day. And honestly, that was still a lot. 100 miles a day would make it so that it was just 2 or 3 hours of driving still by the time you hitch up and then you set up your campground. 100 miles, I feel like that's why I wrote a book. In fact, if any of this you need help with, I have, I'll make sure I link after the live to, it might take me a few minutes, but to my book, 1,000 Miles of Memories. It's on our shop page on Nomads. It's free. You can download it. It has some of these rules that I've applied, like 1,000 miles over 10 days. Or if you're going to do 800 miles, you need to sit still for 8 days. It's like 100 miles per day seems to be like the sweet spot for me. And so we were driving for a while, 100 miles, and then just not sitting still. And then weather. Florida is way more beautiful than I expected it to be, but it's beautiful because it rains all the time. And so knowing that, like in the 1,000 Miles of Memories book, I put that in the end part, like look at weather ahead of time, look at weather averages, and remember that we're in the middle of weather warfare. So there's weather. I kid you not, I track the weather on my phone and I'll take screenshots and like it always changes. It's not predictable at all. And that's a totally side conspiracy theorist idea, but it's really hard to plan your trip and account for weather. The first time we went to Europe, we had no idea it was going to rain so much. And so we constantly were having to adapt. So building in some of those days, if your intention is to be maybe adventure driven like mine is, then you really have to build in a few extra days in your travel. If it's totally about, all right, I just want to get to Miami and stay in a campground for a month. And, you know, if some days it rains, no big deal. I'm just going to stay in. I don't do that very well. And in addition, if you have a family and you're forced inside all day, people get grumpy and it gets really hard. And so planning this is a big reason why so many people go to Baja for winter if they full-time travel, or that they stay in Texas and Arizona, because when you have to account for weather, it gets a lot harder. Now, we had another problem. So first, we weren't getting in the sports we wanted. Our intention wasn't aligned. Second, we were traveling way too fast. We were trying to cram way too many things in. And honestly, my over planning kind of came back. Like I had planned out all of these campgrounds in Florida, especially state parks, because they're affordable. They're in beautiful locations. I didn't want to spend a ton of money on RV parks. I've pretty much canceled and rescheduled almost every single one of them. So while it's nice to plan ahead, it's really hard to stick with that plan. At least it was for me, with the intention that we had. Some people might be able to like just go, okay, we're just going to roll with it. Some places we're going to skip, and sometimes we're not. We had to get down here to Miami for a conference I'm going to this weekend, so I didn't have the flexibility to wait extra days. So that's the second one, is traveling, knowing the speed at which you need to travel. The third one is comfort. Like normally with good weather and a lot of nice campgrounds, comfort comes easy. There's a place to hang a hammock, or at least we can go sit outside. But that has not been the case. In Florida, there are these things called no-see-ums. I believe that's what they're called. They're like the tiniest mosquitoes that you can't see. Well, the last campground we were at the last 3 days in Sebastian Inlet had a ton. Like we were parked on the grass in the campsite, and there were so many of these, like the walls in our RV were covered with them, and we got eaten alive. And so we're like scratching our body till it feels like it's going to bleed. So we had, I think with one of them I could have handled like good weather and driving a lot and having like good reward in my sports. Maybe I could handle like, all right, the sports aren't so great, but we're traveling slow. We have time to squeeze this in. It's all going to be fine. But then you add in the third discomfort of just like not wanting to move because you're so bitten up by these bugs. And we finally moved spots. It's not so bad because this campground still has grass, but has concrete pads. So it seems to make it a little bit better. But I got to tell you, if you come to Florida and you just know that the like no-see-ums, honestly, I'm not sure what it's like if you're parked in sand, but I can tell you the beaches in general, so far as the south part of Florida, there have been a ton. Even standing on the beach, you're just constantly being bit by these. So third factor is comfort. You have to be able to build in a sense of comfort. And I think that different personality types, different wiring. I'm type 8, so I like to push myself to a breaking point. But then if I hit that breaking point, it's not good. And if you're a very highly driven person that just likes challenge, push yourself, I can do more, you're going to end up making it worse in the long run. So you have to know yourself for those things, okay? How many days you need in each location, how much recovery you need from the driving, what your expectation is, and where are you building in your comforts. Okay, so again, 1,000 Miles of Memories kind of covers a lot of these things, but I always start my trip planning. I'm pretty obsessive about trip planning. I always start it with like brain dump of, and it starts with our sports. So I'll open up, say, all trails and look for amazing hikes. By at this point, I'm already have kind of a Rolodex in my head. But if I was starting off, I'd go and look up like best hikes around the U.S. and I keep a list of those. Best places to go mountain bike in the U.S. Keep a list of those. And at some point, it was in the world. We would go like best surf destinations in Europe and make a list from that. And so I start with this whole just brain dump, get all the ideas out on the table and go, okay, this is right now we're looking at ski resorts. Okay, best ski resorts in the U.S. Or best ski resorts in the U.S. for less crowds. You start by going on Pinterest, just searching it, DuckDuckGo for the best ones. You can a lot of times saving them on Instagram, Googling it on you or searching it on YouTube, whatever it is. Like just get an accumulation of like these are the places I would want to go, and then next step is what I was talking about, weather. Like look at weather averages. Know that there are definitely fluctuations, but if you look at the weather averages, that will help you quite a bit. For us, rock climbing is a huge driving force. So I look at, I have a list from looking up best rock climbing destinations in the U.S. We've already kind of accumulated a lot of those places. And then I'll go over to Mountain Project and cross-reference there. Okay, what's the averages? And knowing what temperatures you like. If it's in the mid-50s, some people be like, oh, that's beautiful. Nope. I am out. Mid-50s, mid-60s, I would rather be in 30s and 40s and skiing, or 70s and 80s. I don't really want in between. And if I'm in the 30s and 40s, I better have a really comfortable resort. I am probably not going to be wanting to sit in my RV for very long in that type of weather. We would do it for short trips to like go to Breckenridge. We would go and take Momo, our Class C. We would drive, we'd see a break in the weather. We'd drive in, we'd sleep in like parking lots, ski for 3 days. And as soon as a snowstorm was about to roll in, we'd make sure we were out of there before it came in, because it would just be too much stress. But it was really fun. You've probably seen the video of that on YouTube. It was really, really fun, but it takes an element of planning. The next one is I kind of am obsessive about calculating routes. So let's say I want to go from point A to point B. I'm always looking, okay, I want to, or we're trying to plan our trip back to Polson right now. And I'll go on and go, okay, well, from Miami to Polson, what are all the different options? And then I'll start writing them out and I go, okay, well, what are some key, remember when you're brainstorming, like what are some of the best ski destinations? What are the best rock climbing? I'll cross-reference with weather. That's too cold. There's no way. We need to take a southern route. It's kind of common sense. I get it, but maybe go a southern route. And so you start picking some spots. So I had a point where I'm like, well, do we want to go up through, go climb Horseshoe Canyon in Arkansas, or should we go climb Austin, Texas? We'll probably go to Austin, Texas. Then I start going point to point. Okay, well, my last campground is near Tallahassee. My next spot is Austin, Texas. How many? That's 700 miles. Am I going to want to like try to jam pack 700 miles into one day? Which sometimes, yes. Sometimes it's better is get it done, get a big chunk, and then sit still for 3 or 4 days. I really should sit still for 7 if I followed my rules, but I'm not good at that. So you start looking and go, okay, well, 700 miles is a little bit much. People are going to be grumpy. Don't want to break that down into 350 and 350. We could go see New Orleans. We could do, I think New Orleans to Austin's about 500. There's not a lot to stop and check out. This is where what type of RV you want is so important. If I was traveling in our Class C, it would be very easy to cover those 700 miles and just kind of tick off 100 or 200. You wake up at a destination, you go for a hike, you grab lunch, you hop in the RV, you go another 100 miles or so, you explore a little town, you grab some dinner, you go another 100 miles, you pull over at a rest area, you make the beds, go to sleep, wake up early. I can cover a little bit of distance while they're sleeping, things like that. That's different. In our fifth wheel, I have to prepare we can occasionally go and say cover 300 miles. Like I'm not going to drop the trailer to go explore a city. If I'm going to drop the trailer to explore a city, I'm going to drop the trailer, level it, set up the slides, unpack the bikes. Like it's hard with a fifth wheel, especially if you have big slide outs, to like undo everything. In a Class C, I can move around in it without the slide outs having to go in or out. And you can be mobile. Same with like if you're in a travel trailer, it might be much easier to drop your travel trailer, especially like an Airstream. Drop the Airstream, uncrank it, you're off and going in 5 minutes. Each RV makes a different adjustment. If you have a big Class A, it's going to be a little bit, and you're not towing a vehicle, it's going to be a little harder to get into cities. You know, I kind of can push my luck with a 35-foot Class C and take it into almost any city. It takes a little work, a little planning. And like San Francisco, I go in really early. If there's, but a lot of a lot of cities have RV parks downtown. So if you search it ahead of time, like RV parking, in fact, I don't have my phone, but on Google Maps, a lot of times we'll just be like RV parking Sturgis, RV parking Miami, and you can find places. The All Stays app also will show parking. Campendium will show parking. You do have some options, but again, it takes a little bit of planning ahead. So I'm just going to reiterate just so that you can just join. The spots are like, you have to make sure that intention is lined up when you're planning. What do you see yourself doing? You know, most of the things I do in coaching now are all about trying to help people tap into their third eye in being able to put yourself in the future reality that you want to create. What is the vision you see for yourself? Why are you doing this in the first place? And we tend to live in a reactionary mode. Our emotions are being driven today by a past emotion, and it's hard to break that. So if you're going to like, oh man, I want to live life to the fullest, I want to live in an RV, or I want to travel for a long time in an RV, you have to shift your mindset to be able to see a new reality. And in order to be successful in that, you really have to step back and think, why am I doing it in the first place? Right? If you just carry your old story, your old habits into RV living, I don't think you'll last that long. I know that's why it was so hard for Victor to do this for so long, just because it was like, well, he had an expectation for predictability and didn't really have an expectation for how he wanted it to feel. Now it's much more intentional, but I can tell you it's like tip of the iceberg right now. It could be so much more intentional, but that takes a lot of work to sit down and script out. This is why I'm doing this. This is what I want it to feel like. So you know your intention. You're not traveling too fast. You're thinking ahead like, okay, how many miles can I cover? What do I want to see specifically from A to B? How much time do I need that? And is the weather appropriate in that area? Or is the weather even something that I like? Like, am I going to enjoy it? Yeah, I really want to climb Horseshoe Canyon in Arkansas, but I'm not going to enjoy climbing it in 50-degree weather. So why spend an extra 200 miles of driving just to detour to see it? The other part is the gas. You know, we talked about that in the last one, budgeting out, okay, actual expenses. How much is that going to cost me? Is that going to, and if you travel slower, it'll cost you less because you're not going to be, covering as much distance. I found though that we're spending a lot more being in this fifth wheel in the truck because we'll take it to a hub and then we'll do like hour day trips out to things. Well, I'm spending a lot more money on gas than I would if I was traveling with our Class C, because we would just kind of wander through all of those things. Okay, then we get to campgrounds. So planning out, because now you're all right, I kind of know my path. I know why I want to get there. I know what I want to do there. Next part is knowing like what the best campground is. In the last live stream, I talked about how much we love state parks. I highly recommend starting there. Depending on the state park, though, you might find if it's a really great state park, it's really hard to get sites. You just have to keep checking often. A lot of times, one of our favorite campgrounds last winter was Sand Hollow in St. George. And I would get like 2 or 3 nights at a time. And then I just keep checking sporadically. If I was up really late or up early in the morning, I check and find spots. And then eventually I ended up spending a little bit more money because I'd have to having change fees but overall I was spending way less because it was like $40 a night for full hookups, as opposed to an RV park was $65 a night. And not only that, it depends what you like. Remember in the last live, I talked about, are you there because of the environment? National parks are really beautiful to be in, and a lot of state parks can be really spacious. The one in Sand Hollow, I loved because you had all this room, you had full hookups, tons of space for me to get a big fifth wheel in, and it was beautiful. The space around you was really nice. So looking at, you can go on campsitephotos.com, and a lot of times they'll show you pictures of the actual campsites. You can go on Google Maps, and you can get pictures there, but also like aerial views. A lot of blogs have best campgrounds. I know we have quite a few best campgrounds for certain states. And then from there, I would highlight, then we get into the small nitty gritty. For me, once I know my campground, I'm like, okay, I went from A to B. I know the campground I want to be in. I have my route established. I have the days. The weather's okay. Then looking at think through your days. You can't jam pack your days. Well, you can, but you'll end up burning out like I was yesterday. You can't jam pack them with so many activities as if you were on vacation and sustain this. There has to be a shift in expectations to doing a little bit less. And for us, we find before, when we traveled in our Class C, we'd be at a trailhead, a mountain biking destination, something to be, boom, we're going right away, and then travel the next spot. And it was fine when we were on, say, just a 3-week, or one time it was an 11-week, when we were moving fast and we were like, okay, we're going to loop around this and then we're going to come back to San Diego and chill for winter. That's different. If you're constantly trying to squeeze in every single major thing and you're only going to do this for 2 months, 3 months, do it. Cram it all in. If you think, oh, now I want this to be a lifestyle that I can maintain for years to come, I'm selling my house, I'm going to be committed to this for a while, then you have to pace yourself. And you have to think, okay, well, maybe there's, you get to we're in Miami. Maybe there's 5 things I really want to do in Miami, and I have to be realistic. Like, I can't do all 5 in 2 days. Knowing, and some things you might want to just scratch. Cities are can be a lot harder with RVs, but they can also, I have it when we traveled in everywhere else but the U.S., we would use public transportation. We'd get on buses and trains, and it was easy. The United States doesn't have that luxury as well. It's not as easy, but you could. If you're more open-minded than I am, you could. So I think that was just that was pretty much all I wanted to cover as far as the logistics, to not make it overwhelmed. Again, I'll add, after this live, if you just go to nomadswithapurpose.com and you click on the shop page, or I think at the top shop, and it says workbooks and ebooks, I have a free ebook, 1,000 Miles of Memories. It was from the very first year that we RV'd, which in some ways is really good because over the years, I just have too many stories to tell and too many experiences to try to, that was like the first year's model was a really good model for anyone starting off. It's a really good way to understand, like, what was the whole point of doing this? Why would I want to escape the rat race and defy the norm and do something different? It also, at the back of it, shows worksheets for how everything that I went through, like brainstorming, looking at weather averages, picking your route, picking your campgrounds, picking what you're going to do each day. I kind of broke down the worksheets into, like, okay, AM, PM, evening, like, where do you want to go? People, to me, it's just a natural byproduct of how my brain is wired and how we've lived. I don't really have to think through those steps so much anymore. But I know when you're starting off, you do. You have to think, okay, well, I'm waking up in Miami, and let's see, I want to go see this one thing, but checkout is at noon. Shoot, how am I going to see that one thing? So if you have a lot of things you want to see, you're going to need a night on each end so that you don't have to worry about switching campgrounds. And think, okay, well, I have 5 things I want to see, and I can only really squeeze in 2. I'm going to need 3 nights now. Don't forget how long it takes to pack up, to transition to another spot. If you tow a 5th wheel and you don't love having to navigate gas stations with your trailer or with travel trailer or 5th wheel, think about getting gas before you hitch up. Some of these little basic things that we might forget about when we're first starting out doing this. Okay. And then the last one I wanted to wrap up with is campgrounds. A lot of campgrounds offer weekly and monthly rates. So when you're trying to pick your campgrounds, you could also search, make sure you look at what their monthly rate is, because it could save you a ton of money if you find that you have that they do offer. I know for us in San Diego, it was like $100 a night to stay there, but it was only $1,500 for the whole month. And so you're getting it pretty much half off. The 1,000 Trails, I told you in the last video, I don't highly recommend them, but they can cut your costs by a lot. and it can add it could get you started at least and make it easier to get the process started. When you go on thousandtrails.com, at the top menu, I think it says like explore campgrounds, and then you can see if there's campgrounds, because some states don't have any. We didn't use it for a long time because like the states we wanted to go just didn't have any. Okay, leave me a comment. Let me know what you want to hear next. This is such an easier way for me to record. So let me know if that helped, and any other questions, and I'll try to answer them next week.